So what this actually means is the global system operates under the illusion of consent rather than the fact of consent. Now, we presume under law that adults understand the agreements that they're getting into, and they have given meaningful consent to them. This is a legal fiction. We know it's not true. Every court in the world knows it's not true. But the basis of our contract law and our regulations suppose that it is true. Now, in the most generous way, we could say that adults maybe are consenting to not care about these things. That's the most generous thing, rather than they are being exploited or preyed upon, because even if they did read these agreements, which they don't have time to read, and they do not have the sophistication to understand these agreements, which were written by experts and specialists in the field, even if we suppose that they are adults, and they have a certain level of life experience, they have a certain level of education, even if it is uneven across the population, which would permit them to enter into these exploitative and self-destructive agreements. But for children, they have none of these things. They do not have an understanding of the world, of its history, of its interoperating systems. They do not have an understanding of the law. They do not have an ability to grant meaningful consent here because they're not informed as to the choices. They cannot understand the legal agreements. All they know is they want to watch the next video about the pretty kitty that they would like to pet, right? And yet, consenting to these agreements grants basically a universal and transmissible right to these platform providers that we are reliant upon to then exploit us, to capture and make permanent records of our activities and our interactions with this service that are no longer ours, right? And this is important because we as humans change. We as humans try new things, and particularly as we're young, we make many mistakes. We do embarrassing things. We say embarrassing things. We say terrible things. We say offensive things. And part of the human process of maturation involves being able to recognize that what we have done is a mistake, to disown that mistake privately, inwardly, to recognize it's a mistake, because we don't want to tell the world, I did, this terrible thing, it was a mistake, because in front of an audience, there is social pressure to say that we have not made a mistake. We are trying to avoid shame. We live under constant judgment, right? Because these actions are linked. And what is happening is, we presume that adults have consented to these systems. They have not, and we know that they have not. But we presume, for the basis of continuing the current legal regime without much disruption, we accept that at the very least they should know better. Children do not know better. They cannot be expected to know better. And to permit these operations against them as if they had agreed with it violates even that loose legal fiction that there was an informed consent granted that operates in the space of adults.
Yes, exactly. Thank you so much for that. Children cannot understand the full dimension of giving consent, and this is actually one of the key issues, and I think with that you have perfectly set the scene to move forward.
Following up on what you were saying about that children do not understand consent and what's going on with their data tracking, do you think that children's data collection, storage, and commercialization should be different from that of adults? And then, if so, how can this be done?
I do, but I think we also need to think about it in the larger framework. To understand what's wrong with the handling of children's data, we need to understand what the problems are that have arisen from the handling of adults' data. The issues that exist today in the space of adults' interaction with these devices is the fact that if everything that they do is watched and observed, every action is judged and results in some kind of consequences. Again, this could just be showing you a different kind of ad for shoes on a sidebar, but it could also be appealing to you to change your political affiliation, to vote or not vote on an issue, whether you are offered a job or not offered a job, or an invitation to apply for a job, or whether you receive some sort of credit or other position in your life. It is the fact that these decisions are being informed and influenced by the information that is gathered from you and about you through many different means by many different actors, and then traded and reshared and sold and rented throughout this information ecosystem. Now, part of the problem with this is we can understand where a service provider might need to hold records about a customer. Now, how long do they need to hold this data for? What if that person is no longer a customer? What if they have shut down that account? What if that address no longer exists, right? In the utility context, it's easy to see where we might create cases where we go, this data should age off. But the reality is, this kind of data, this kind of record, should only exist for as long as it is necessary, for the minimum interval of time required to deliver on the requirements of a consensual relationship. Now, what does that mean in the context of everything that's not so clear? What does that mean in the informational space? What does that mean if you have a Gmail account? What does that mean if you have ever typed anything into the Google search box? What does that mean if you don't use Google services at all? You bought an iPhone. It has an Apple operating system on it. You downloaded an app from the store that's supposed to deliver weather services to you. But the people who developed that app added Google software to it, which the end user, you, are not even aware of because it provides analytics to the developer. And these programs are widely spread. They're called things like Firebase or Google Analytics. The developer of the weather app uses this to make money for themselves or to save effort for themselves, to understand the people who are running this application in this country are more likely to use this kind of phone. This kind of phone has a crash in the program when it operates in this way or that way, so they can improve their software. Again, we start to get back to that utility understanding where we go, okay, there are ways where this could be useful, but did you agree as the user for Google to have access to this data? Not in a meaningful way. You didn't know it existed. And even so, how long should that data be held? Should it be held for 1 week? Should it be held for 1 year? Should it be held for 10 years? Or should it be held for the period that increasingly approaches forever as data storage capabilities continue to improve? And the reality is, whether we're talking about Facebook, whether we're talking about Google, whether we're talking about Amazon, who runs half the internet beyond running this online superstore through their Amazon Web Services cloud hosting platform, it's important to understand that they all try to collect data about people and systems, the computers that interact with them and the devices that interact with them, not just their owners, maximally. And they try to retain this information maximally because to them, they see power and profit that can be derived from their unique understanding, their silo of insight into human behavior, or the individual human behavior of the species written broadly. This is things like the social graph, for example. This person is connected to this person. They are related. They live at the same home because their phones spend the night at the same place consistently, night after night after night.
you.